Hello, good morning and welcome to ET Now's the newspaper show with me, Varun Hiremat. Before we go any further, let me let you know that the newspapers are completely safe. They are not a source of spread or contamination for the COVID-19 virus. So it's time you get your newspaper delivered to your residence once again. In order to do that, you can go to wantmypaper.com, where you can explore all the delivery options available for the same. I repeat, wantmypaper.com if you are interested in getting the newspaper delivered to your residence. With that being said, let's now get a move on, and we have an action-packed Tuesday morning for you. Lots to discuss and plenty of stories making headlines. So let's begin with the Economic Times and specifically the top 10 headlines coming out of that newspaper this morning, beginning with the fact that the economy may have shrunk by 14 to 26% in the first quarter. Sustained recovery so far in August, says Nomura. Serum Institute looking for a $1 billion shot to fight COVID. Serum to start vaccine phase 2 trials this week. The Supreme Court seeks government view on making Jio pay RCom dues. Auditors red flag Tata steals Europe business. SEBI to discuss one commodity, one exchange. WhatsApp hunts for payments business head. FB executive files plaint over online threats. And finally, the US tightens curbs on Huawei. We're now going to bifurcate for you, as we always do, market versus corporate. So let's get a move on with the top 5 market headlines of this morning. And Raamdeo Agrawal says gold is no more an inflation hedge. Shankar Sharma says he sees no end to the bull run. Shut FT funds get 708 crore more payment. HDFC Bank, US firm to study classification claims. IBREL embassy to fix valuation swap ratio. Let's now go over to corporate headlines. UB's brewing a beer delivery plan for you. The vaccine's key to travel recovery, and Booking.com. Volvo to assemble models in India from 2021. Sanofi buys US-based Principia in a $3.7 billion deal. And finally, medical stores, Amazon e-pharmacy entry illegal. Okay, we're now going to talk about a story that's on page 1 of the Economic Times. And according to the paper this morning, the world's largest vaccine manufacturer, Serum Institute of India, is in talks with private equity investors, including Blackstone and KKR, as well as philanthropists and social venture funds, to raise up to $1 billion for the vaccine. But Pankaj is here and he tracks the pharma sector closely. Good morning, Pankaj. Welcome to the show. Thanks for taking time to chat with us. What exactly are they needing this $1 billion for? And is it contributing towards the current vaccine efforts or towards something new?
So it's exactly, why they need it for a large-scale manufacturing. That is something which they're looking to raise these funds for. Serum Institute is, of course, one of the world's largest vaccine manufacturer. They are in talks with private equity majors, both the major ones, the likes of KKR, the likes of Blackstone, as well as philanthropists, to raise funding of around $1 billion. Now, they will float a special SPV. This will be for vaccine candidates going ahead. That is what ET has learned. The amount raised will go entirely and not only towards the Serum Institute of Technology. The company expects to close the fundraising by about September end, and they have said to ET in response to this story is that we are in talks with a few investors, but there are no comments beyond that at this point of time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Pankaj. So it seems that some fundraising is on the anvil at the Poonawalla Company Group in order to ensure that they can meet all the enhanced demand requirements as well as production of these vaccines. Thank you, Pankaj. Always great to get perspective from you. Let's get a move on then. And the next story is on page 11 of the Times of India. And it's about Axis Bank. And in the last 12 months, Axis Bank has raised around 22,500 crore rupees. You may have heard via the QIP, share sale, also perhaps some stake sales in subsidiaries. It has used all this equity money that's essentially come in to make excess provisions for the COVID-19 related accounts. So wherever they anticipate there's going to be a bit of slippage, they've already gone ahead and pre-provided for that in essence ahead of time. In an interview with the Times of India, the MD and CEO of Axis Bank, Amitabh Chaudhary, spoke of how this particular fundraise we just cited enables the bank to take on the pandemic risks and even grow its business this year. So we've now seen, ICICI has also closed off their QIP. Kotak was already done. Axis is now done. It'll be interesting to see what really comes up in Q2 that these funds were used for. Let's again switch gears back to page 1 of the Economic Times. And the Supreme Court has sought the government's views on whether Reliance Jio must pay up Reliance Communications due, as it has been using the Anil Ambani-led companies since 2016. So that's a point of contention there. Jio told the Supreme Court that there is no legal basis for transferring bankrupt RCom dues to Jio, as two telecom operators in a spectrum sharing agreement do not share liabilities. The court has adjourned the case till Wednesday, but Abhimanyu Sharma, who's been tracking this closely, is joining in with the fine print. Over to you, Abhimanyu.
40,000 crore rupees of AGR dues from bankrupt telecom companies now hinges on saleability of spectrum under the IBC. Yesterday, the top court had asked Reliance Jio if they should be held liable to pay Reliance Communications AGR dues if they are earning revenue through shared spectrum. While the three-judge bench led by Justice Arun Mishra asked DOT's view on recovering RCom's AGR dues from Jio, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta replied that the government will officially support any decision taken by the top court to help recover AGR dues from telecom companies. The Apex Court will continue its analysis today on the financial condition of bankrupt telecom companies and see if they are faking bankruptcy to avoid paying AGR dues. The court had asked the DOT to provide an year-by-year breakup of the money owed by RCom to the government. Responding to the court's query on permissibility of the sale of spectrum, Solicitor General said that the formerly divergent views within the government were now united in opposing any trade of spectrum, since the government was of the view that by virtue of being a natural resource, the spectrum cannot be traded since it belongs to the people of the nation.
Right, thanks for that, Abhimanyu. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out, but you can clearly understand both sides of the argument, whether it be the regulator or whether it be Jio. So, very interesting story. Do have a read if you're interested. It's making headlines this morning. With that being said, another one which is making headlines this morning and is on page 6 of the Economic Times is WhatsApp. And there seems to be a bit of a search for leadership over there. WhatsApp is looking to recruit a senior leader to head its payment business in India that we've now all been hearing so much about for so long. We just can't wait for it to launch. It's awaiting the final approval to launch the payment service in the country. The person who they're looking at will be hired as a director of WhatsApp payments in India and will report to the WhatsApp India chief, Abhijit Bose. Abhijit Bose joined WhatsApp in 2018. Let's remember, he was the co-founder of EasyTap, and he was the CEO there as well before he switched over here. So it'll be interesting to see who they find. But Chandra is joining in right now to walk us through this story. Good morning, Chandra. How important is the selection of the person who's going to be heading this particular vertical? And could you just kind of tell us how big or important this vertical is for WhatsApp?
It's going to be a very important vertical, Varun. As you said, it's been in beta mode for the last 2 years because they've been awaiting final approval, but it can potentially disrupt the payment space in India when they finally get the nod to go ahead. As you know, they are awaiting final approval to launch their payment service. And last month, the RBI told the Supreme Court that WhatsApp has met all its data localization mandates, and that the NPCI has also given approval to WhatsApp partner ICICI Bank to go live on WhatsApp Pay. However, WhatsApp Pay still hasn't been issued a letter of approval. Now, they have over 400 million plus active users in India. So they've advertised this position for someone who can help WhatsApp build a globally significant payment business and something that they can take to other markets as well. So if you look at the job listing, it says that it's a senior leadership position that requires payment and product experience, as well as a track record of success, leading partnerships and business development in India. And as you know, the market opportunity in the Indian fintech segment is attracting a variety of players, startups, tech companies, and commerce companies as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they are able to differentiate themselves and if they are able to take away market share from some of the leaders now. The segment, of course, is led by the likes of Google Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, and the others. But this is going to be an interesting appointment. It will be fascinating to see who will finally head up WhatsApp payments in India, but their final approval is certainly imminent because they seem to have met all the conditions, all the mandates with respect to data localization and other conditions.
Okay, superb. Thank you, Chandra. So WhatsApp, the search for leadership is really heating up. And now that they've met all the data localization norms, it's just a matter of time before they should be kicking off WhatsApp Pay. We all look forward to that eagerly. Thank you, Chandra. Always great to get perspective. With that being said, let's make a move on and coming to the very important subject of moratorium. Now, this story is on the ET Markets page, and it's very frightfully similar to what Mr. Uday Kotak flagged off to us 3 months ago when he spoke to us about what happens if just 5% of the loans go bad in the system. So we're now hearing that based on recently collected data, 60% of the total loans under moratorium could, which actually, like you see, make up 4 to 8% of the banking sector loan book, could seek restructuring. Now let's remember, the banking sector capital is just 1/10 of the total loan book. That means if even 5% of the loans go bad, and this is what Mr. Uday Kotak explained to us, it can be a huge problem for the system because it's eating up potentially 50-60% of the capital. So this RBI special window is also citing the same thing. A large number of loans are now coming for restructuring. Brokerage firm Jefferies has also said in a note that out of these loans, as much as 50% could slip into NPA. So Jefferies is even possibly more negative. If you count that restructuring is not going to help and it goes straight into NPA, that would be a worse outcome. And this totally would result in a slippage of 2% or 4% of loans in the next 2 years. So very interesting read, and we're all watching out for those Q2 banking numbers to see what happens to the moratorium figures and what happens to the NPAs once moratorium has lifted. And that's why all the banks have been raising money the way they have, in case you haven't been aware or tracking that story. So that was the moratorium. We're now going to switch gears to page 11 of the Economic Times. And the auditors of Tata Steel Europe have said there is significant doubt regarding the company continuing as a going concern, owing to the concerns over its ability to raise adequate funds for working capital requirements over a period of time. In Tata Steel's integrated report and annual, the auditors have stated that Tata Steel Europe has received a letter from its global procurement company. The letter from its global states that it represents policy is given by way of comfort only and is not to be construed as constituting a promise as its future funding plan. So basically, perhaps the funding tap from the parent is going to slow down and they need to figure out different ways to fund the business. Accordingly, there can be no certainty that the funds required by Tata Steel Europe Limited will in fact be made available. So that's a key one to look out for. Let's see how that counter holds up in trade this morning. Let's now get a move on, switching gears to another important story revolving around gold. And it seems that the RBI board has met on Friday and considered a dividend of 57,000 crore and also mulled on the issue of reserves. Sources tell ET now that the RBI may look to hike gold reserves to 10% of its total reserves and is studying ways to bulk up gold reserves. Let's go across to my colleague Ruchi Bhatia for more on this.
the RBI, the central bank, may look at bulking up their gold reserves. Top sources tell us in ET Now that the board of the RBI that met on Friday and discussed the issue of dividend transfer of close to 57,000 crore rupees to the central government also discussed the issue of diversifying the reserve basket of the RBI. In fact, we at ET Now are given to understand that as against the current reserves of close to 6.5 to 7% in terms of gold, the RBI board, when they meet next on the 23rd of October, will be considering the issue if the reserve basket should be increased to 10% in terms of gold reserves, coming in at a time when the board of the RBI discussed the issues whether from the current levels, which is the highest ever forex reserve, if we should keep amassing forex reserves or should the reserve basket have more of gold and less of US securities. Important to note that many other central banks are also looking at buying gold at a time when US bond yields are close to 0%, and in a low yield environment, gold is the only asset class that is offering some sort of a return. As I said, India's current foreign exchange or forex reserves are the highest ever at close to $538 billion, and the foreign exchange asset component in this is close to $492 billion. Gold reserves are only about 6.5 to 7% at close to $39 billion, and the idea is to diversify the reserve basket of the RBI. In fact, questions were also raised on whether the cost of amassing or buying more dollars is outweighing the gains that we're getting from overflowing returns. In fact, we at ET Now have been speaking to a lot of experts to understand this issue, and they say that while yes, the move is in the right direction, the idea is to diversify the reserves of the central bank a little more, but perhaps at this point of time when gold is touching record high, the time may not be right, and which is why the technocrats in the RBI have to prepare a detailed roadmap and have to look at the right opportunity when they can go and buy gold. Perhaps buying gold and keeping it in the reserves at this point of time when the gold is touching record peaks may not be a very wise idea. However, as a long-term strategy in a bid to diversify the reserves of the central bank, it is a step in the right direction.
All right, thanks for that, Ruchi, and definitely important developments given the way gold has been rallying. But switching gears to another important story, a big boost to the health sector was announced by the PM from the ramparts of the Red Fort, under which all the citizens will be given a health ID and will empower all the countrymen to have better health. Excuse me. The National Digital Health Mission will create a digital health ecosystem for the nation and cover all citizens. 130 crore population will be covered. ET Now's Nayantara Rai got in conversation with one of the architects of this, Indu Bhushan. Let's listen.
On Health ID, you're absolutely right. The aim is to provide unique health ID to each individual, each citizen of the country. The reason being that we want to have a marker on which we can have their records, not we, the person should have their records, health records on their fingertips. I'm saying their fingertips, not anyone else's fingertips. They should have linked to any health record that is created, whether it is immunization, whether it is any lab report, diagnostic report, or they've gone to a hospital, then clinical report, e-prescription, all that should be available to a person. For making that available to a person, there should be a unique...
Okay, that was Indu Bhushan in conversation with Nayantara Rai, and it's a pretty interesting initiative that the government's planning. But as we wind down the end of our show today, we're coming to the end. Let me give you the top 5 headlines from the Times of India. Beginning with the fact that the Maharashtra tally has now topped 6 lakh with only 25% active cases. Cons, Kiran Majumdar Shaw tests positive for COVID-19. Access to continue with pre-COVID provisions. Flipkart in talks for e-pharmacy business. And finally, Rakesh Asthana named BSF chief. So those were the top 5 headlines from the Times of India. It's goodbye from me. Stay tuned to ET Now for the market.